everyone, and welcome back to another episode. My name is Dana, and I will be your host. And our guest today is Simon Skinner. Hello, Simon. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Awesome. So before we get started into our topic, why don't you just tell us a little bit about you, your company, what you do, all that kind of good stuff.
Sure. So my name's Simon Skinner, from the UK. I've worked predominantly for US companies, I guess, really. I've been in IT for longer than I want to remember, but it's somewhere around the 26 years. It started off around data center management, and now we've arrived at cybersecurity. I was a Microsoft MVP for 7 years as well. So I have a fair amount of skin in the game, but every day I seem to learn something new and forget something I learned yesterday. So,
Well, there's a lot to learn every single day, and all this cybersecurity is still growing and growing every single day and becoming more common knowledge to more and more people, which is important. And one of the things we're going to talk about today, our topic is incident response. And before we get into some of the specific questions, can you just explain to people who may not even know what that is? What does that mean? What is an incident response? What is an incident response plan? Like, give us an idea of what we're even talking about.
so we have enough tools out there. There's a plethora of tools out there that will tell us that something's wrong, but they may not necessarily explain very well what's wrong, what the risk is, what the risk is to our company. So having an incident is being able to understand what an alert is, what it means, what its risk is. So it's a combination of many factors, but all of it is very, very important to actually protecting your company. Something I thought of the other day that was kind of random is that because this whole cybersecurity, people say, oh, you've done IT for 5 years, you can be in our cybersecurity team. Mm-hmm. But if you were going to have an alarm fitted to your building, would you just ring anyone to do it? I don't know. It's just like this random thought I had. No, you wouldn't. You would ring a professional, or you would look to see what standard they had. Did they meet up with the insurance regulations, et cetera, because we would take that seriously. And cybersecurity, I'm not 100% convinced that we're taking it as seriously as we should.
Well, I don't think we are. And I think a lot of people assume IT and cybersecurity is the same thing, because from a very layman's point of view, they're thinking, well, this is my computer, right? And you deal with putting all the stuff that you've done for years and years, software, hardware, you've been my person. So why can't you just take care of all the bad things that could possibly go wrong in there? And I hate to dumb it down like that, but I think that that's part of the problem, is that people really do say, well, you're the computer person, so you must be the cybersecurity person. And there's definitely a lack of knowledge with, obviously, you have to learn a whole different, set of skills to be a cybersecurity professional.
Sure. And anyone that I've trained through this, I say I could take you to a shooting range, and I'm not a skilled sniper, but in two weeks, I reckon I could get you hitting bullseye every time. But then what happens if someone starts firing back?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. That's a good analogy. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's get into our topic here. So we're going to talk about incident response. And so from a regular person working in a company, they have an incident, they think they have an incident. How should they respond? What should be the first thing that they do?
So I think, first of all, and actually there's another question that comes up that kind of relates to this one. But first of all, just stay calm. Don't panic, okay? Because that's when things really start going wrong. But don't respond with a question, because otherwise then you're confusing someone else. So then there's two people that are confused. So it slows down the process. Also, something I came across a couple of years ago is, don't look on the internet. Don't immediately go looking up things, because if you're being attacked, it may be a clever attack. They may be doing their due diligence on you. They may actually be monitoring your internet traffic. So if you go on the internet to start looking for the answers, they may see where you are in your kill chain. So it gives away too much information. So how do you respond? Well, you fire drill, and you plan constantly, like as if you're on a nuclear submarine. You see in the movies, they're always running around with a hose pipe, putting out an imaginary fire, and they do it day in, day out. So when it happens, it becomes second nature. So IT teams should be planning, fire drill. So then when something happens, yeah, you're not going to be prepared, but you're going to know what to do. And that's an important thing.
Yeah, that's a very important thing. I always talk about that when we were kids. Everybody knew what to do with a fire drill at school. We
Yeah,
would practice all the time. Anytime you got into a new classroom, the beginning of the year, throughout the year, so you know where to line up, you know where to go, all that. But if you look at the average employee, if there was a cyber incident, would they even know what to do? No, and they won't. They'll be left to their own demise, and that's when the Wild West kicks in, and everybody's doing whatever they think they should be doing, right? So that's not good.
exactly right.
Okay, so now, what if we have the wrong skills to qualify an incident? How do we even know, like, who's supposed to be the person that's like, yes, this is something bad that's going on?
Well, when we take someone on, when we hire someone, we go through their resume, we make sure that we bring for references, and we go through that whole due diligence very accurately, trying to get the right person. Then, when we have the right person on board, and say we take on a networking engineer, then we automatically assume, hey, you're going to do cybersecurity now, but we don't know if they're qualified. It's just because we know their name's Bob or Sheila, so therefore we're happy with that, and we think they can do the job. So you got to make sure that you have the right skills, and if you don't, that's okay. There's a lot of people out there that will outsource. That you can outsource your incidents to. I know that where you deal specifically with CMMC, you've got to be careful that people can deal with that kind of information. We came across something about 2 years ago. We were working with a US company where they'd had a cyber attack, and there was a massive company, Fortune 500 internet company. Halfway through the dissemination of the attack, we worked out they actually weren't allowed to view any of the information and shouldn't have been on the call in the first place. And, because they're a household name, don't take it for granted. So make sure that you do have the right people internally, because literally your company can depend on it. And the kind of damage that can be done by a cyber attack is the kind of thing that will be discussed in a boardroom, because there can be company closing, and destroying, and if it gets out the communication, it can take away all your reputation. So make sure you have got the right skills internally, so when you qualify an incident, you know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because after something happens, that's when everybody starts asking questions of, well, what are your credentials? What were you doing beforehand to protect this information? And all that kind of stuff comes out, and that's never fun to deal with. So another, you just mentioned something very important. So confidential information or proprietary information or anything like that. So what's a good way to make sure that we can maybe keep that stuff more secure?
Are you having a hard time finding new customers? A lot of folks just like you in the IT and cybersecurity space are in the same situation. And they have embraced a new opportunity to get new clients. They're doing this by growing their online presence and maximizing the power of LinkedIn. How, you ask? I have a tried and tested method called my Cyber Social Program. I myself have been on LinkedIn and now have over 3.5 million LinkedIn views, and over on YouTube, I have over 750,000 video views. So I can show you exactly how I have done that, so that you can promote your organization and become the authority in your industry. And the best part is, I've done all of this organically without one paid ad. You don't need to waste your money over on Google with pay-per-click ads. Now's the time to establish yourself. Look around. The competition isn't doing it. This is your time to shine online before they do. So if you're ready to start your online journey and future-proof your business, please, down below, click the link and schedule a time for us to have a 45-minute call where I can review the exact methodology of the Cyber Social Program. You can also click below to see some of my masterclasses, which will give you quick little snippets of a couple of things you can do right away on LinkedIn that will help with your profile. I hope to see you and hear from you soon.
Well, first of all, wherever we got the alert from, say, I don't know, whatever you use as your SIEM, say Microsoft Sentinel or something or other, is relatively secure. We have a log on to get into that, probably hasn't been hacked. So use links back to wherever the source of information came from, instead of copy and pasting the alert and sending it to someone, because we don't know if that's going to be picked up somewhere else. We don't know if that email's secure, or emails have a habit of hanging around for a long time and someone else sees it another day, and that's how confidential information got out. So make sure that when you do your planning and your fire drill, because these are really important factors, that you also discuss and finalize what the means of transportation can be. And copying URLs back to the source is probably the most secure way that you can deal with that. Because if there is any exfiltration afterwards, when you go through with the insurance companies, etc., that's exactly what they're going to be looking for and what kind of damage to reputation. And if you've become part of the problem because you panicked or you didn't know what to do, then that could be just as bad as the actual hackers themselves.
Mm-hmm. So after you go through an incident, so let's talk about what we should be learning from these incidents and then what we do with that information moving forward.
So risk assessment, work out what could go wrong, and then work out what's unlikely to go wrong, because that will probably go wrong as well. Just drill through the constantly. It keeps your powder dry. It keeps you thinking about cyber, because you're constantly trying to work out how you can outmaneuver things. Now, I always tell any team that I ever work with that the hacker is probably cleverer than you are. So by each time that you have an incident, or you think about an incident, or you plan for an incident, how can you learn by that? How can you document and share that with your other members, so that everybody's kind of like ready, so we don't leave anything any stone unturned. And then if there isn't a response, then afterwards, then we should be going through all that information again. So you're constantly living and breathing, opposed to like spending 8 hours a day for 3 months doing something that's not even related to cybersecurity, and then when you come to do it, you're not tuned, you're not ready for it, which kind of goes back to the first question. You've got to have the second question, you've got to have the right staff. They're going to be in the right mindset.
Mm-hmm. And is there anywhere that cyber professionals that go through situations, they can share their experiences so that other people can be learning from these? And if there is such a place, how do we know that the hackers aren't in there learning just as much as the people that are trying to share information with each other to be protecting?
Absolutely. So intranets are a good place for doing that. Something like SharePoint Online, for example, because if that gets compromised, whoever the cloud provider is going to tell you about that in the first place. But you can also do regular dark web searches on yourself. We use a company, or we partner with a company called Flare, and we're constantly looking up to see if we've got information that's in the dark web that's your problem tomorrow. We often focus on what's our problem today, but what's just coming around the corner. So yeah, make sure your data's safe by using an intranet. Don't put it on public websites or anything like that, or documents that are unprotected.
So, okay, speaking of these specific incidents, are there different names for different incidences as to what happens, or what are we calling these things? Because there's so many of these things all over the place.
Yeah, right. And get familiar with MITRE and ATT&CK. So it looks incredibly like a sort of a periodic table, if you will, that we have from school, but it will put everything into a vertical, which makes it a lot easier. So anything sort of to the left is at the beginning of an attack, and anything to the far, as you go further along to the right, is further the chain that the hacker comes to. So whenever you get an alert, make sure you're familiar with MITRE and ATT&CK, so you can look to see at what stage you are through an attack, and that will give you a really good heads up and prepare yourself for any kind of like lateral movement, or any kind of exfiltration.
And then what do we need to be documenting, either during or after, or whatever?
That's a one-word answer. It's everything. So in your planning, in your fire drills, document, make sure that everything's detailed. But then if something happens, detail and document everything and go through it, because there'll be something in there as you sift through the information that will help you prepare for next time. And this is where we start building up experience. People say constantly the skill gap. How do you learn? Well, getting in the trenches is one way of learning, but then each time something happens, really look into it deeply, understand what happened, understand what you could have done better. You can always do something better the next time, and you'll be more prepared. And eventually you get up to like a red team or something or other. But it's being laser focused on what it is, what your job is, what you're trying to achieve, and the information you've got are really going to help you, be on top of your game. So documentation, everything.
That's very good advice. And you know what else happens too is as time goes by, your memory, you start to forget things. So if this comes up a year down the road, 2 years down the road, and you have to kind of remember all the details, you're better off writing more down than not enough down. So if you have to relive
At my
it
age, that's really good advice.
Yeah.
I have to write everything down these days now, but
Yeah, me too.
yeah.
Well, this was really good. And I think this is a very important topic for us to be talking about and sharing and just letting people know, no matter how small your business is, you need to make sure that everybody, if it's 2 people, 100 people, whatever the case may be, everybody needs to know what their part is when something is happening or maybe potentially happening, so that we're not worsening the situation and instead of trying to clean it up, make it better. So this was very helpful here.
Yeah, I think it's getting worse. It's not if it happens, it's when it happens, and and being better prepared for that. And it's protecting our own jobs, because these days it can have a financial impact. And if you're not sharp, if you're not on top of your game, it could have an impact on your own job. So it's worth watching out for.
Yeah. And the other thing too is if your clients or if you have a vendor that you're working with, that they say to you, what were you doing beforehand to make sure that this wouldn't happen? So then you have to say that if you were doing anything. And then you have to say, well, what did you do when something came up and you realized that something was happening? And then you have to be able to say, well, this is what we did. So, it could just get very bad, very messy very quickly. So anyway.
Well, I've seen this once actually, where a situation didn't go well for a company, and with the insurance and the assessors and the damage control team that they brought in, and the sort of like good communicator team that they bring in, that the third party company, they actually sued them because they said that they weren't qualified, they weren't ready for something, and these guys were based out in California, but they sued them for I think it was around $250,000, because they weren't what was on the label at the beginning, when they signed up, and when they weren't ready. They weren't, people said, yeah, do your homework, that you're dealing with the right team of people or external people, company, that they actually know what they're doing, and how many attacks and alerts have they actually dealt with successfully, and ransomware attacks, etc. Because it's pretty good to know that information beforehand.
Yeah. And also, if you have cyber liability insurance, you need to make sure that they may have certain protocols that you're supposed to follow, specifically either contact them, contact a certain number, whatever, contact their team, so you need to make sure that you're at least checking on that as to what their expectation is, because the last thing you want is for a claim to be denied because you didn't handle it properly, because as we know, these can be very expensive. So.
Yeah. And lose all your data as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this was really helpful. Is there anything else you can think of that you want to throw out there in regards to this?
No, I think, when I was asked, and thank you very much for asking me to do this, I thought, about the questions, because I think this is a good foundation for people to be able to not only make a start, but they can carry this throughout their whole, career in cybersecurity. Because although the attacks may change, the rules stay the same. Plan, fire drill, document, make sure that all your team are working as a team and harmoniously, and then however things shift, if you maintain that, then you've got a better chance than if you don't.
Absolutely. Well, Simon, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate this. Lots of good stuff here, and hopefully you'll come back and we could do another video on another topic.
Be more than welcome to do that. Thank you. All right.
Great. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you. And thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.